Good morning and welcome to the week. And today what we're going to look at is overwhelm. Now this is really relevant at the moment because we've just set a big task for our champions to build a website in just 10 days. So I think a lot of you, if you're on that and doing that challenge, you might have felt moments of overwhelm in the last few days. For those of you who've been through that, or for those of you who are pushing ahead in life and wanting to achieve more in life and you're learning new things, you will certainly have felt moments where you just suddenly get totally overwhelmed, where your brain kind of shuts down, it all falls apart, and you actually can't think anymore. Now you might even feel that. You can feel that in moments of stress, especially when things are changing more than you feel like you're able to cope with, or when situations arise where you're just not quite sure what to do. And that's those moments. It's really important to recognize when you do get into overwhelm, because this can really hamstring you, especially if you're going out there and you want to make changes in your life. You want your life to be better. You want to create more wealth or more happiness or different situations, different relationships in your life. Often when you first start getting out there and making those changes and doing those new things, it can feel quite kind of, overwhelming. You're learning new things, your brain, you're pushing yourself into this area where you are not in your comfort zone anymore. And if we look at that physiologically, what's happening is that you are doing things where your brain, so remember, you're getting all your inputs coming into your brain, and your brain's always assessing, am I safe or am I not safe? And when you start pushing ahead and doing some things where your brain feels like it can't cope, or feels like it doesn't have the resources to be able to achieve what you're trying to do, or perhaps it can't meet the expectations of yourself or of other people around you, it actually starts to trigger that fight or flight response, that moment where both physically and chemically, so your neurons and the chemicals and hormones going off in your body are actually flooding your body with the message, okay, this is a situation that's not safe. We need to either fight our way out of it, or we need to run. We need to get ready to run, and we need to be prepared for and put you into that feeling of anxiety. And what you need to understand is when that's happening, your brain is actually, the chemistry of your brain is actually changing as well. So you're getting chemicals in there that are making your brain, your higher thinking centers, shut down. So we're coming down. You'll notice you might get very, very focused on one particular thing, and you might run that thing round in your mind over and over and over, and you'll lose the ability, physically actually be able to lose the ability to creatively think anymore. And so it's really important to recognize that and be very, very forgiving of yourself when this does happen. And I will tell you, procrastination is just a kind of mild form of overwhelm. Same sort of processes going on, and it feels really, really uncomfortable. And you start to lose a bit of your creative thinking and your passion and your excitement for what you're doing. And you're actually starting to feel a bit of fear and worry about what you're doing. And so it is really important just to be kind and forgiving to yourself when these things happen. You do get into overwhelm, even though it's very hard. So you do need to just get up and walk away sometimes and remove yourself from that situation, and those, so that you can step back and get a sense of perspective again. Take a few deep breaths, go outside and look up at the sky, and just take a few deep breaths and change that mental state. But what we need to understand is what's happening in your brain at that point, so you can actually short circuit it. Because what Prav is all about, and what I've learned, is that there's always ways to short circuit these automatic responses. So remember, this is Miggy, your amygdala, setting off, firing off a trigger of reactions, and it's out of your logical control. Like, for that actually to happen, once it's happened, you have to accept it. You have to sort of kind of shrug your shoulders and go, okay, righto, I've just been triggered. All this stuff's going on in my body. Now is the time not for me to fight it and get angry about it or upset about it. Now's the time for me to just take a bit of a step back and recognize, catch that feeling and those thoughts and go, all right, well, there is another way. There's something I can actually do about this. And notice that kind of thought process, that thinking, there's something I can do here, that's going back onto your powerful thinking. So P for Prava is powerful thinking. And I want to remind you of how you get back into the powerful thought processes. So when you're in overwhelm, that's completely the opposite of powerful thinking. So remember, when you think about powerful thinking, there's the three things that make up powerful thinking. First of all, there's the taking credit for the good stuff, saying, hey, wow, I'm really good at stuff. And then there's also recognizing that when there is bad stuff, other things are at play. It isn't actually all your fault. So being balanced in your ability to take credit for the good and the bad. Then there's the second thing is the context of it. So how you're thinking about this based on your other areas of life. Are you thinking, oh my God, this is, I'm just stupid. Let's say you're doing something and you can't figure something out, you're learning something new and it just seems all overwhelming. There's too much to do and you don't seem to get it. Often what happens there in terms of context is you think, instead of just thinking, oh, well, this particular thing, I'm just not quite getting this yet, you'll start to broaden that context and say, oh, well, I just must be dumb. I must be stupid. Maybe some of you have felt that and thought that to yourself, oh God, I'm so stupid. That's you contextualizing it, putting it in a broader context than it needs to be. So you start to catastrophize. You take that situation and apply it to all other areas of your life instead of just realizing this is only one little element of me as a person and as this situation. So there's the credit, the context, and then there's also the thought about, will it change? And when you get into overwhelm, you tend to have these thought patterns that say, I'm never going to be good at this. This is never going to happen. I'm never going to change. And that's a really unpowerful thinking process as well. Going down that path of thinking that things will never change. It'll always be bad. It'll always be like this. So if you can start to recognize those kind of thoughts, when you get into that overwhelmed situation, see if you can take a step back and think, okay, what exactly am I thinking here? How are my thought processes going right now? And you hopefully can step back and see, am I not thinking powerfully right now? Am I blaming myself for this whole thing? Am I thinking that this is never going to change? Am I broadening it out into all areas of my life and saying big, broad, sweeping statements like, oh God, I must be so stupid or so dumb or so whatever? And that's step number one, is just recognizing and seeing those thought processes going on in your head and realizing it's not your fault. This is a product of the hormones and the chemicals and the neurological reactions that are going on with your amygdala, shutting down your logical thought processes. And so it's okay. But there should be that your first step back into that power is recognizing it, going, oh, okay, all right, I'm doing this and I recognize this. I acknowledge that this is happening. And that is incredibly powerful in itself. That's you stepping up and actually taking that control back, taking that powerful feeling back. Now, it's not necessarily going to mean that your overwhelm will pass instantly like that. It takes a little while. Remember, those hormones and everything actually need to be processed in your body. So you do, again, have to be very forgiving and kind to yourself and just go, okay, well, all right, I might actually keep thinking like that for the next few minutes, for the next 10 minutes even. I might still have those thought processes come up, but I'm not going to be afraid of them. I'm going to just accept that, okay, all right, I got triggered. That's okay. I'll just take a deep breath and I'll allow that to happen. In the meantime, while that's happening, maintaining that little bit of perspective and watching, and actually even maybe having a little giggle at yourself, going, okay, yep, there's that thought again. Oh, well, I'll let that one pass. realizing that process is going on and that you can allow it to pass. Now, it's been shown that most emotions and that whole process is actually only 90 seconds. And so you can maybe think to yourself, all right, I got 90 seconds, a minute and a half that I need to just count down and go, all right, I'm going to feel a little bit uncomfortable for the next 90 seconds. Maybe more, don't know, depends. As you get better and better and practiced at this, it will be literally 90 seconds. And that's the other thing. You need to remember, emotions and all those things can turn on a dime. Have you ever had, if you've got kids, you'll have seen this happen, where something will upset them. Maybe a toy breaks or they can't have something and they will totally melt down, just blah, and the world will absolutely end for them in that moment. And they will feel the full power of that emotion, that disappointment or that frustration or that whatever it is. They will just go into it and go hard. And then literally within minutes, if you allow them to move through that and don't buy into it and just let them do it, they literally can turn on a dime and instantly kind of shake it off and go, oh, well, yeah, and off they go and they do their thing and it's suddenly just gone. And you would never know 5 minutes later that they had that powerful emotion come over them. And I think as we get older, we're told that an emotion isn't real or isn't valid if it does switch off that quickly. I certainly feel like that happens with sadness or with or any emotion. A lot of adults feel like, oh, if I turn this off, if this switches off and I turn back around so quickly, then people will think that I was faking that last thing, or that wasn't real, or that was an overreaction. And I think that's a shame, because emotions are real and you can experience them in their full entirety, and that's part of life. That's being alive, and allowing that emotion to just be part of you, overwhelm you sometimes, but knowing that it's going to pass and that you're allowed to turn on a dime. You're allowed to switch it straight back off and move on with your day. If that a moment happens, you're allowed to. Sometimes you actually have to give yourself permission to go, oh well, that's past now. And I think for me, one of the biggest things to let me allow myself to do that was understanding the science behind it, that this is a physical and chemical reaction that can switch on and then switch off. And that's perfectly okay. And you can feel the residual effects of those hormones and chemicals and everything for a little bit, but it's okay for that whole process to actually switch straight back off again. And I think we need to allow our amygdalas sometimes to do that. We give it permission. Yeah, sure. You can switch on, all right, and you can switch back off again. So if you find, and on your journey, as you go through this journey, this entrepreneurial journey, if you're on that journey, this journey to change your life, to maybe change the thought processes that you had as a little person, and you want different thought processes now, in that movement, you're going to come to places where you feel overwhelmed, where it feels like nothing's changing, or you feel like you've taken steps backwards and all that sort of thing. And that's where you need to recognize, okay, I'm going into a bit of overwhelm there. I need to remember my powerful thinking and those 3 C's of powerful thinking. The credit. Remember, I've done some really good stuff too. Reminding yourself of the good stuff like we did last week, and giving yourself that boost of confidence. Understanding that, okay, am I taking this out of context? Can I just make sure that I realize this is just one little tiny aspect of me and my life that's happening right now, and there's lots of other parts of me that are absolutely fine and not affected by this. And the change, always remembering this is going to pass. I know it feels rubbish right now, but I'm just going to move through it and I'm going to allow it to pass. So hopefully that helps you move through those moments of overwhelm and feel okay with it. Know that it's perfectly normal and that it's part of your journey as you go through life, and also especially if you're out there pushing and doing some great new things in your world, because it's so worth it. So when you learn how to accept this moment of overwhelm, actually you'll get better and better and better at it. And those moments of overwhelm won't be so frightening or so intense, and they will pass faster and faster. And, you know, if you keep practicing this over time, you'll look back and go, wow, that moment, those things I can change, and that I can train my brain that no, this isn't as much of a problem as I originally maybe once thought that it was. And I can have a different perspective on what this means and how this thing plays out in my life. So hopefully that's really helpful for you this week. So if you feel any moments of overwhelm or upset, just take a step back and have a look at them and think, okay, I'm gonna approach this with power this time. I'm gonna do this differently, and I'm gonna ride through it. So have a wonderful week. Hopefully this means also that you can get out there and achieve some things or have a go at some things that you wouldn't normally have a go at for fear perhaps of procrastination or overwhelm. Go in there feeling like the lion or the lioness with the powerful thinking, and go and attempt something new this week that perhaps you wouldn't have done previously. All right, guys? So have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next week again for another step through the Prava process. Okay, loved having you here. Bye.